So we are back with another episode of TezTalks Radio. I'm your host, Marissa True, and of course, you all know my co-host, Stu Elms. Hey, Stu.
Hi, everybody.
So this week, we are shining a spotlight on Asia and a regional leader in the rapidly expanding fintech and DeFi space. So we are speaking to the marketing director of Shuttle One, Mintam Nguyen. And Shuttle One is essentially an operating system that's bringing blockchain tech to the world of business and finance. So, welcome, Tam. How are you doing today?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'm doing great. We recently won a award as ASEAN FinTech Award and hosted by the Central Bank of Singapore. So very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. But before we get into that, because we are going to touch on that in this conversation, can we just get a quick introduction into what Shuttle One is and how it's changing the DeFi landscape in Asia in particular?
Yep. Yeah, that would be great. So like a 30-second introduction about Shuttle One, we are a operating system for finance that helps business to implement decentralized finance into their operations. And that could be using the cross-border payment used by the fiat, crypto, on-off ramp infrastructure. It could be by using the financings, the loaning using decentralized finance, or even for companies or super apps or startups that want to build their native fintech arm, then we are here to help them build all of that under the DeFi infrastructure.
Okay, awesome. So, can you give us a little Actually, no, ahead of then, let's go back to the award because you have won first prize in the category of ASEAN Finance at SFF or Singapore FinTech Festival, which is a huge, not just regional, but global event. So, again, congratulations. And as I believe you were the only crypto or blockchain company that was going against some of these big names, what does this award represent for the state of crypto, either
I
regionally
mhm.
or globally?
Yeah, for sure. I think there are a few, several crypto companies are competing under this, but I think we are one of the two crypto companies that have been selected as winner for this year. This actually represent a bigger perspective of the regulations and the entire market on crypto company because maybe a few years ago, even in central from the Central Bank of Singapore, they wouldn't support cryptocurrency and they don't really like to talk about cryptocurrency as a whole. But now, like during this fintech festival, they are publicly announcing and sharing that they want and aspire to build and become a cryptocurrency hubs. So that's really changed how the regulations and also the market has been viewing on cryptocurrency. And now we are more recognizable as being more serious and not just all about tokens and rice rally.
So that's pretty exciting news about the Singapore Central Bank. Um, we hear a lot about exciting things happening in the Southeast Asia region in the crypto space. Can you give us a snapshot of what the DeFi ecosystem looks like in the region right now?
For sure. I think for DeFi in ASEAN it means the like the South Asian countries. I experienced that there are a lot of adoptions and in within the industry or within the market themselves. In Thailand or in Singapore, Indonesia, they are progressive regulations talking about how do we regulate, how do we open up for cryptocurrency, how do we become the cryptocurrencies hub in our region or in around the world. We have Philippines that is the biggest market for Axie Infinity, not truly related to DeFi, but is a gaming projects that has bring a lot of newcomers into cryptos. We have Vietnam is the top two market in the world in terms of retail investors and transactions on change from Vietnam's. So all of this are coming in from ASEAN or Asia as a whole when we think because Gen Z is, or the younger generations, is most dominant percentage of our populations. So they are more willing to accepting and trying a lot of new products out there, especially in DeFi and gaming as a whole.
So you think that that large demographic of younger Asians is what's driving the bus on this, or is there something culturally that makes the region sort of a fertile ground for crypto entrepreneurship?
Very good questions. I think all these countries, except maybe Singapore and Thailand, are all developing countries. So there's a cultural mindset of hustling and trying to make money. And because in culturally here, all these countries, there's a big difference between the wealth class, right? The rich and the poor. There's a big difference between it. So up until now, there's not a lot of options for the like middle class or even like the lower class to trying to break out of that. But now crypto is present a projects and opportunities for people to make much more than their normal average living wage. Like for Philippines, right? Like their average living wage is maybe $2 or like $20 a day. But with crypto, like Axie Infinity, they are earning much more than that. And like for some countries like Vietnam or like even in Singapore, where you when you are a small company, you it's harder for you to get good credit with the bank. It's hard for you to get loan. It's hard for you to get the capital leverage that you can implement and excels in your startups. So decentralized finance or crypto as a whole represent that opportunity for people to break out and do something different for their life. So
That's
I
really
think that's
interesting.
the biggest drive for the adoptions for sure.
Cool. So if we zoom out and look at the larger picture of DeFi around the world, we see a lot of companies working to sort of claim their seat at the DeFi table right now. From your perspective, what do you think is going to separate the ones that succeed from the ones that don't?
I think it's gonna be the solutions that are gonna adapt to regulatory regulations is coming, and that's for sure. And if you really want to make a difference, you don't want to be the unofficial projects that on the tables and uh, just being an online casino where people can just put their living wage or their life saving up there, then you need to start looking into regulations and companies that are working towards that or in preparations to that is gonna be the one who's gonna survive and in the long run.
No, I'd wholly agree. And I think based on Shuttle One's track records, you've already engaged with thousands of small to medium enterprises within the region. And one thing that I think is interesting is that I would say one of the main lessons you've learned is that you have to be prepared for the regulatory hurdle the moment it does choose to rear its head. But then, what what do you believe that Shuttle Ones learned from all of these use cases? Like, what are the trends that have come out from engaging with these SMEs or those that are using a service like Shuttle One? What are their needs, or what are the main gaps that Shuttle One is now aiming to fill?
Mm. So, before getting to that, I would like to explain basically what we do or what kind of business model that we are aiming for. So, for Shuttle
Sure.
One on decentralized finance, we don't service the end user directly. What we do is that we help platforms, we help ecosystem that with existing user case and business that working with them and provide decentralized finance with them. So let's say right now one of our partners is a government Singapore government linked company called Global E-Trade, and basically they are a trade a system that support the global trade community in 60 countries. And what we've been working with them is basically provide trade financings and cross-border payment through their products Callisto Finance to all these enterprise and SMEs. From what we learned is two things. Number one, user are not necessarily need to know this is DeFi to use DeFi. People are really still we're in a very early adoptions rate where um, you have to explain what's DeFi and all that. But if you think of how MasterCard and Visa and how all the banking work now, people only care how fast, how good, and how cheap it is. They don't really understand how does that work in the back end. So that's number one. So for us, when we working with this enterprise, we don't try to convince them this is DeFi. We worked on how to bring a very user-friendly interface where everybody can get it and the first time. We show them how fast and how secure it is to do trade financing that can get done, approved, and facilitate within 72 hours. We show them how incredibly fast and cheap it is to do cross-border payments between countries that doesn't necessarily and still stay in compliance at the same time. So when we showcase all those benefits, of course, enterprise is going to be very impressive and they start using it. And if you go and interview any of those users of do they know about blockchain or do they know these are blockchain based, 99% of them might don't know about this. So now that's number
They
one.
just know that it's useful.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that ultimately answers my next question, which is basically what do you think will attract consumers away from the traditional financial system and more towards DeFi? And I think it's interesting that you touch upon, because I agree that ultimately the end consumer doesn't actually care whether they're engaging with blockchain or DeFi. They just want a service that works. And so I think the other school of thought is those that are bullish towards trying to engage with DeFi directly. So that first hurdle, that first barrier to entry is often a mental one rather than a practical one. Um, but then in terms of how you see this affecting the remittances landscape in particular, like how is Shuttle One actually marketing itself in a way where people see it as sort of the more direct option?
I think we don't try to do that. We don't try to be this is a direct options for user because we what we try to do is we try and get mass adoptions and more users, right?
Hmm.
Do those user need to know these are DeFi or not? We disagree. We think that if we shows enough benefit through our partners, through ecosystems, and that's how we're gonna drive adoptions. So it brings to my second point. The second trend are we seeing when we work with all these platforms, and this could be B2B, B2C, B2G's platform ecosystem that are serving a big user base already. If you see there's a trend in startup or in the regions in generals, there's a trend that once you become sort of like a big startup with ecosystem, you will start to provide a kind of fintechs or financial products into your user base. Many reasons for that. You are drive more usability. You get your users stay within your ecosystem more. A lot of reason for that, but there's an incentive for these ecosystem to build and run their own native fintechs. So we work with these ecosystem and we help them build and integrate blockchain and DeFi within into the ecosystem. Now the second trend, when we work with these guys particularly, we seen that uh, they don't care which blockchain they are building on, or also it's very hard for them to grasp all the technical requirements to build on each networks. So
Hmm.
what we're doing is we're building a multi-chain aggregators where all these ecosystem B2B business can build on top of these meta-chain aggregators, and boom, you connect to all these blockchain network. So the next trend that we're seeing is to have multi-chain products.
So, one quick note on that is can you give us a rough idea of what the competitive landscape looks like for you within the DeFi realm, not necessarily against the traditional financial players that have been there?
Hmm. In terms of building on like real world adoptions like this?
Yes.
Hmm. I think in the regions in ASEAN, I think we're the only one that working directly to try to bring real world adoptions. In this case, we work with government linked institutions. We work and consult Port Authority of Singapore's a lot of companies to understand blockchain and a lot of banks to implement blockchain into the ecosystem. Outside of ASEAN, the second name that I think when we talk about real world adoptions would be Contour, where they also building a trade financing, supply chain related DeFi. However, the difference with us is that we are not trying to stick within global supply chains industry, because our products is basically operating system for finance. So basically any business that's running and needing a operating system of finance specialized in decentralized finance, then that's where we are.
How many countries is Shuttle One being used in right now?
Right now, I believe we have service about 10 countries, 13 industries,
Are they all in
and about
ASEAN?
there's are some in Arab, Middle East, and the US as well. So because our partners is Global E-Trade, where they service the the supply chains industry of 60 countries. So that basically our market. And so far there has been around 11 countries that has adopt and try and use the products themselves.
Very cool.
Mhm.
I read a recent interview with, I believe it was your CEO in Tech in Asia,
Mm.
talking about how sort of the larger goal of Shuttle One is to address some existing some existing problems in public blockchains, those being security, scalability, and affordability. How did you identify those as your key priorities for the project?
I think what we try, so it go back to the meta chain, which is the multi-chain aggregators. When we start building or we start working with these B2B companies to build on DeFi networks, um, it's really hard to scale due to a lot of reason. So our first network is Ethereum's, and you might already know some of the problem when we work with businesses that the cost to run on public blockchain doesn't make sense. As a business, they don't really care how centralized, how decentralized, or how that thing behind blockchain, but they care about how do I run something efficiently. And because of that need, that pushes us to finding how do we scale faster and better. And that's where we come to Tezos, where we want to bring the B2B users into Tezos, because this is where they can see um, the benefit of blockchains. And the way MetaChain is going to do it is we it's not going to be like the regular multi-chain products where you have to choose the network to use a products. The difference with MetaChain is that it will choose the best performing network at the transaction time. So let's say we have a transactions from loan approval to loan disbursement. The loan approval with credit scoring might run on Tezos, but the loan approval and the loan disbursement might run on Ethereum. So that's how the product's gonna come in live, and that's how we are solving in terms of scalability. In terms of how do we choose the best performance network, we will choose it based on four criteria. The one is how fast the network at the time, um, what is the cost to do the transactions, what is the security, and last but not least is how decentralized the network is. So our plan is to build and integrate more network into MetaChains so that anyone who built on MetaChain can benefit from all the blockchain network.
So would you be evaluating each chain based on those criteria on an ongoing basis? Would that be something that was automated or
It will be automated. So
okay?
we are still working on the fundamentally like the technology behind it, but we vision that eventually we might let the community or the developers to have a say on how important each criteria is, and then maybe you can vote on it, and then we will build accordingly to your needs.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was actually going to be my next question of how you prioritize which ranks, like if they're fastest but slightly more expensive, how that balances out and how that impacts the end user. Um, I like the notion of the meta chain approach because I think it tackles that ongoing conversation around interoperability and basically saying we can kind of sidestep that a little bit and get the best of both worlds or multiple worlds. But then one key question is, what are the challenges that Shuttle One is still facing in terms of its growth potential and where and how it wants to execute this roadmap?
I think for us at the moment, we are still building our own products. Right now, we are building the multi-chain aggregators, and we also build our own products on top to show the world how does the how does metachain is going to work. But on the roadmap, we envisions that this is going to be a solutions that all the dApps out there, or Web3 applications out there, can build on tops, so that you can consolidate your interface within one and still able to attract and use all the benefit from all the network. One use case that we are going to experiment in the next coming months and next coming weeks when we're listing or joining to the Tezos communities is change arbitrage for our SEO tokens. So if as an early crypto adopter or builders on public blockchain, maybe you could remember that there was a thing called exchange arbitrage. Okay, so on one exchange, for example, like in Asia, it could be 500, and then on US exchange, it would be 1,000. What will you do? However, as the industry matured, decentralized exchanges became the frictions of this decentralized method. Cobalt, like this create the fragmentations, and when we try to build meta chain, what we try to do is that we want to have our tokens on all these networks, and we want to see how the community and how the community will interact within all these change. So now let's say if SEOs on Ethereum is 20 cents, but on Tezos is $1. What are you gonna do in that? So that is the adoptions or the use case that we want to experiment in the next coming weeks, and we want to show to the crypto community all this so that yeah, and hopefully it's gonna be a successful experiment and more token and more projects gonna build on MetaChain.
So to cast back a little bit in terms of Shuttle One's first integration of Tezos, what was that, I guess, experience like? Like, what was it that attracted those two, the Shuttle One towards the technology? Because obviously you did some work directly with TZ APAC, and it'd be great to understand that story.
Well, when Shuttle One started building on Tezos, we realized that the code in Tezos is not something an average engineer will understand. And actually, one funny story is our CTO, Sam, he has to refresh his knowledge from a 1988 textbook on Pascal to start building on it. So luckily, the Tezos Foundations and Arthur had gave us a massive support through TZ APAC and making sure that we understood how the metadata issues and code base are solved, and that thankfully for that support, we were able to cut short our learning and bring our ecosystem into Tezos ecosystem much faster. So we are really thankful for the experience. And yeah, we hope that with the meta chain, that maybe we can start helping more applications and projects start building on Tezos, because we vision it is going to be a non-code single API where with one single connectivity, you are now connected to Tezos, just like that.
Very
I'd say you're
cool.
welcome, but then I'd just be taking credit for something I didn't do.
Were you there at least?
No, not yet. I was just prior to my arrival.
If we can circle back for a second, like obviously you're a marketer. I've come from a marketing background. So does Marissa, and I was very interested by what you said earlier about rather than pushing rather than Shuttle One's message being we're a DeFi crypto blockchain finance company, the message being, instead of that being, here's a tool that solves a problem more effectively than the existing tools that solve that problem. And I'm wondering, is there something to be learned from that message in terms of the larger sort of endeavor to market crypto to the masses? Is this something that, is this sort of a fundamentally something that should be shifting in the way that we were talking about crypto?
I'm not getting the questions yet. Can you
Okay,
repeat it
I'm
again?
sorry. I don't think I was very clear. So what I'm saying is that for you guys, the way that you're marketing Shuttle One is as a tool that solves a problem rather than a DeFi tool or rather than a crypto tool, correct?
Yes.
So what I'm wondering is there a lesson in that for the crypto community at large, where obviously, you know, adoption is growing, but there's still a lot of hesitancy out there. And a lot of the hesitancy comes from, you know, some of the tools that have been developed don't necessarily deliver on their promises, right? It's making sense.
Yes. I think each approach has a pros and cons. And I think the way crypto has been going has always is still very good in terms of getting recognitions and getting like the buzz around. So that's how we are attracting the early adopters. I think more important beside marketing is gonna be the narrative in regulations and compliance. Um, since the narrative in the cryptos right now, or whenever there's a regulations related news, there's still a lot of FUD around it. People are still getting really scared about it, and I think the narrative should start changing into, oh no, regulation is bad, they're gonna stop us from innovation, etc. Then it should change to a narrative of regulations is coming in so that we become legitimate, so that we become recognized, consumer feel protected from cryptos or all the fraud, and they are more willing to use. So from with that, I think with the coming futures where regulations and governments are now more open and accelerating in learning and understand cryptos, we are really coming close to that reality.
I like the approach of not seeing regulation as essentially one massive dampener on blockchain progress, but rather the thing that's going to enable more movement in the future, because it's going to take away a lot of the insecurities around the space that's actually preventing a lot of people from engaging in the first place. And exactly as you said, more regulation often means more legitimacy, and that's only going to take the whole space forward.
Yeah, and I think
I
that's also the reason why we decided to choose to work with Tezos in the beginning, because we also understand that Tezos community and the foundations team has always very focused on tackling the compliance related challenge in the crypto space, and that's why we decided to build on Tezos as our first our first multi-change network into the meta change.
Well, it's definitely, you know, I guess what I was kind of getting to was, you know, these things have to work. They have to solve a problem, right? In order for people to adopt them, and in order for there to sort of be more trust in the ecosystems that are being built on it.
Yeah.
And certainly, you know, compliance is a key component in that, because as you said earlier, like, it's coming. It's not avoidable that at some point it's going to be more heavily regulated than it is now, right? So it behooves us all to get on board with that.
Yes. But honestly, as a marketer, I think we can do better in terms of marketing in generals for sure. I mean, gamifications or gaming in generals has done a great job in bringing a lot of people in. But I think maybe in terms of narrative in generals, I think a approach of more user friendly or like layman friendly, then that would be also very great for adoptions. I like the fact that we generate and create a lot of new terms in the past, like entire industry. Every single day, you can come onto the newspaper and you can see a new term from cryptocurrency, right? And people have to start learning again. What if we can approach like a similar methodologies that have been used before, and when people think about, they just instantly understand what we're trying to do. So maybe that's my perspective in terms of marketing. Yeah.
Oh no, I absolutely and wholeheartedly agree that I think one of the biggest barriers to this space is the fact that we have a vocabulary that frankly most people just they're either their eyes glaze over or they just shut down upon hearing it. And what is good about it is that the more the conversation is being had, the more time people are taking to understand the term. Because I'm willing to bet 9 months ago, people didn't know what an NFT stood for. And now it seems to be the only thing that people keep talking about. But
Mhm.
at the same time, we have to find that middle ground between basically being able to translate it back into normal human speak. Like we can't
Yeah.
constantly focus on the technology and the back end, as you say, because ultimately that's not the thing that people are looking at, but it seems to be where the emphasis of the conversation lies. And so I think that's a job for every marketer within the blockchain space. And that's going to be our job for probably the next few years before these terms really just come to a level of full normalcy.
Yeah. Well, when you look into kind of like marketing in generals, whenever the products need an educational phase, it always takes much longer time to reach the adoption. I think right now for us, we are within the educational phase, and because of all
Hmm.
these, there were a lot of terms, a lot of methodologies that are very new in the ecosystem, that it takes longer for people to try to understand about it. But eventually, the amount of people are willing to learn gonna gonna go out. Like I hope
Yeah.
that eventually they convince more friends and family to start to learn into cryptos, but we cannot rely on that kind of ripple effects or the community effects only. Right now, crypto
Yeah.
community are very, very good with building community, even for Tezos, right? You guys are really good with building community, and everybody is really understand the true cost behind it. But how do we reach outside of a community? I think that's the questions for all crypto projects or cryptos companies out there.
Well, from my perspective, I think it's it's a matter of, if the ecosystem functions well enough, people will have no choice but to learn, because this is where everything will be happening, right? It's a matter of building to a point where the ecosystem is that strong and the tools are that powerful that it's unavoidable. And I think that's why having communities like we have in Tezos is so important, because we have to support each other and we have to make sure that we cover our bases and make these things run, right? So it's awesome to hear what you guys are doing. I was like reading up on it today. I was blown away that you guys have made so much progress on this. As we're sort of coming to the end here, is there anything you'd like to get out there before we sign off? Anything you'd like to plug? You guys are working on anything like that?
I think I've been plugging in every single answers already. Yes, but in the coming weeks, Shuttle One is gonna officially join Tesla's community. That means that we are bringing our SEO tokens into the Tesla's ecosystem. Our products, our Plug and Play DeFi, basically where enterprise can use decentralized finance into their operations, has already built with Tezos and it's live. So on our system, like on the end user interface, you now can see Tezos hash and all that on the end users. But I think for the viewers out there that are excited and maybe they wonder why should they care about SEO in general, I think number one, in the next coming weeks, we are experiencing something called change arbitrage, basically using our metachain, multi-chain aggregators to experience what happened when a token's price is on multiple chains. And number two is that with MetaChange, we would like to invite developers out there who are looking into, integrating with Tezos and all the other blockchain network to come join MetaChange, because we will thrive and become an automated aggregators where you can build on multiple blockchain networks all at the same time. Yeah,
And
I
if
think that's all for
somebody
me.
if somebody wanted to keep updated on your progress, where would the best place be for them to do that?
I think guys should join our Telegram, Shuttle at dash one, or Twitter on the same tag.
Beautiful. Well, Tam, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Everything is extremely impressive, and it's amazing to see Shuttle One go from strength to strength. And we're excited to see all the new developments that are going to come out in the coming weeks. And of course, to all the developers that are listening out there, here's your chance, seize the opportunity. But yeah, otherwise, just a big thank you for sharing the Shuttle One story and what the project is up to. And hopefully, we'll speak again soon.
All right. Thank you guys for having me. And it's been a pleasure to just start joining and get to know all the Teslas community. And yeah, I hope to see you guys again soon in real life, hopefully one day.
Thanks so much for coming
Definitely.
on.
All right.